So January kicked off with some pretty fun reads, and I can't wait to tell you about them. I hope your 2025 has been going well. I'm not gonna lie, it's a little bit of a dumpster fire, I think, for some people, but as far as the book world goes, A++, I've been super happy with it so far. So let's kick off right into The Shadow Prince's Ruin by K.A. Merikan as a really, really fun escape. Now, this is the second in the Dark Companions series, and I do recommend reading the previous story first, as this one does pick up right after that one. It's a different couple this time. We focus now on Sylvain, who's been, spoilers for the first book, exiled into the human realm. He's from like this like Fey nightmare / night court realm, and him and his family, I mean, not him directly, but his family had a plot to assassinate the current ruler, who was, the leader of the last book. So major spoilers for that, but go ahead and read it because it's super fun. This whole universe is very gothic vibes, lots of like that dark kind of like, skulls and black and, very fun, like, teenage gothic hot topic, but in a really elegant way. I really enjoyed this series a ton, and the aesthetics of it are just like really, really well done, and the world building is top notch. So Sylvain is exiled and working a low job at a fast food joint for options. That's what was available in a sense to him. He doesn't need other humans to know what he is. He's actually supposed to be hiding that, but when Hawk, who walks into this fine establishment after getting out of prison, for reasons that will become apparent later on, he uses Hawk as a way to escape. And Hawk kind of like sees this kid, and he's like, I'm intrigued. You look really nice, and I like your vibe. And so they do go off together. And I love how Sylvain is always upfront about him. He's like, I'm an exiled Prince Fae. I'm trying to get back to my realm. I hate this freaking human world, okay? And Hawk, for all his faults, he is kind of like a huge-hearted cinnamon roll character at his core. And he's like, I like what you're putting down. I'm really attracted to you. I'm gonna like let you play out this fantasy. Like, he does not believe that Sylvain is actually an exiled Fae. But he's like, you know what? This kid wants to role play being that from that realm. He's kind of got the vibe going on, the aesthetic. I'm gonna roll with it, and we'll see where this goes. So it's kind of, I love how like he's just like, I'm gonna let this kid do what he wants. It's cool. It's not hurting anyone. And then meanwhile, Sylvain's over there plotting how to get back. And Hawk is this huge man. So there's this massive size difference between tiny little Sylvain, who had like minuscule magic, shall we say, in the Fae realm previously. And then Hawk is this huge ass muscular dude who just got out of prison for murder. I will say K.A. Merikan is known for their darker aspects, and this whole series in its entirety plays this really nice line between being comedic and entertaining, and then having like these dark themes. So there are some darker, maybe slightly, I guess, disturbing. I don't really think so in this series in particular, but there are some of, especially the darker themes that are threaded out, but it's not one of their darker series. So I think if you're kind of looking into getting into those dark books, this is a great place to start. And just in general, whether it's other K.A. Merikan stories, or just, you're like, I really want to know what's going on in those darker darker realms kind of thing. This is a great one to kind of get your toes wet with, to see like, oh yes, this is for me and I want to go more, or no, this is kind of where the line is, or back off entirely. I think you cannot go wrong with the Dark Companion series, if you've already been kind of teasing with that, and if you like like fays and magic and anything like that, then this is totally for you. I will say, it's almost like a two-parter, even though it's not set up that way. But the first half is set up in the human realm, and the second half does take place back in the Fae realm. And the nice thing is there are certain events that happen, certain choices made that do have solid outcomes. So there's people that, things happen and they're changed for the rest of the story. There's no like going back to like the previous naivety, quote unquote beautiful facade that started out as, which sometimes does get lost in the muddle. And I do like how K.A. Merikan does. It's a duo authors, and they do a really good job of really making choices kind of matter. And like some of their books, there are like loss of limbs and other things that there's, like I said, this one's not going too far down that rabbit hole, but there are for sure consequences that cannot be taken back, and changes to both characters, which is really nice to see. Like I love to see that all play out, like that no one comes out of certain circumstances unscathed in a way. It's just, I find it really refreshing. And also, these two characters, both of them have families that are problematic in different ways, I would say. And so they have a hard time opening up and trusting other people, but yet they are able to create this space with each other, especially because Sylvain is still like always up front with Hawk and what's going on, that they are able to show some vulnerability between the two of them. Now there's still some trust issues which does cause certain, not problems, but some walls maybe, some difficulties later on, but overall, there is a decent amount of communication between the characters, and they do show each other a side. They do not allow anyone else to kind of see behind the mask in a way. So super recommend it. Like I said, the aesthetics are beautifully described, and the world building, there's so much detail in it, but it doesn't feel like it gets bogged down in the details. I highly recommend it. If you like it, if you're intrigued by any of that, you definitely want to check it out. Kind of moving away from the fantastical now, but still kind of keeping like not darker themes, but a little bit of like this mental health awareness. We're moving into Not Catching Love by Saxon James. Now, this is the last in the Accidental Love series, and the whole series has been fantastic. They're called Birth the Boys because each book focuses on a guy living in the quote-unquote birth the house. So it's a house that they're each renting a room from, and they've kind of become like a chosen family. And so these Birth the Boys have gone through a lot, and each one kind of, I wouldn't say it's like necessarily, I don't know, maybe it was intentional, but it didn't really feel like it. But each one kind of has their own mental health topic that they're kind of like dealing with. And I will say Xander's story is probably one of maybe the most emotionally charged out of all of them. Xander has been a product of neglectful parents and some truly not great experiences through the foster family. So there are some content warnings and maybe some trigger warnings that if that might be a thing that you need to watch out for, I highly recommend taking a look at that before diving in. Also, even though each of one of these could be read on its own, Xander and Seven have this bond from being in the foster system together. They are not a little bit toxically, but codependent on each other. And Seven's story is not dating material. So if nothing else, you have to read Not Dating Material before Not Catching Love, because there are a couple scenes that are rehashed and seen through a different people's POVs. And also, I think the emotional impact is a little bit greater when you see what Seven's gone through versus how Xander is handling events. So that's my recommendation. Take it as you will, but just read the whole series. and you won't have a problem. But Seven's book was great too. But Xander, because of everything that's gone on in his past, he has these anxiety attacks where his brain is like, you've caught, Ebola, you've caught like cancer, you've got like a lot of health scares, a little bit to get attention, but it's kind of like grown and become a debilitating factor in his life. And when those happen, Seven or one of the other boys gets Xander to this particular they keep calling it a pharmacy, but there's like a nurse around, kind of more like an urgent care, I would say, where this particular nurse, Derek, sees Xander because he kind of feels responsible. He feels like the other nurses don't really take Xander's panic attacks seriously, so he still believes that even though like he knows that everything's gonna come back fine or whatnot, he still treats each time he sees Xander as like a legit issue, a legit need to go through all the steps again. So it's been a long time that this has been established, and then through this there's just been maybe some feelings being caught, but there's an ethical concern with Derek being a caretaker for Xander. So Derek is wrestling with moving on with his life. He's wanted to do like a traveling nurses programs and all this, but he feels like he has to kind of stay here in this city for Xander. And so there's a tipping point where Xander's like, well, maybe friends more than Derek's like, we can be friends and that's it. So I like how Derek did stay firm because he didn't want to compromise his morals and his ethics, and more importantly, he likes being a nurse and doesn't want that to be compromised and taken away from him. So while there is this tension between them, they also start to build like an actual friendship outside of like the urgent care. And then there comes a point where Derek's like, okay, if you want to see where this can go, I can no longer be your caretaker. Like, we have to put a stop to this. You have to see other people, for these particular instances. And then also, like, there has to be some kind of time gap in order to to preserve, like, I didn't, influence you and all this other stuff. And so it does span a decent amount of time, and some distance between these two characters while they kind of get their stuff in order. They both have their own baggage that they bring up, whether it's, as intense as what Xander's going through or not. They both have like their own history, and Xander at first is really hesitant and anti almost therapist for his own reasons. And so it takes a while for these two to like get to that spot where they can be together. And I kind of like the whole build up. I liked like the support that Xander starts to see in not just Seven, but the expanse of his found family, even though everyone's, now that they're all kind of coupled up and started to build their own lives. But there's the beauty in the epilogue. If you like, the epilogue is one of my all-time favorites. Most epilogues are great, and you get to like see like that glimpse beyond, which is really fun. But this one really clinches the whole thing together, and it was very well done. It's probably one of my favorite Saxon James stories that I read, and she's got a lot of fun characters. The dialogue is always really witty, but Xander's got like a really special place in my heart, and I love how Derek and him, I like how they finally come together, and I love what they build for themselves. It was really, really sweet. So, kind of keeping along with like a contemporary, but now threading in a tiny bit more fantasy, is Sunrunner by Sam Burns. So again, this is part of a series, the Summertime Chronicles. There is an overarching plot line, so I do highly recommend you kind of have to read from the beginning, because there's this whole background where this volcano is going to go if people don't do something about it, and then everybody will die. Right? So while trying to do this, there are 4 quote-unquote ruling families. Now almost everything is pretty much, I would say, contemporary, except for the fact that people can bond to stones. So each stone type has like a different like like boost, I guess you would say, or property. So like, sapphires help people understand, like, or not understand, but like they do stuff with like emotional connections, where diamonds kind of like help with like physical strength, and like aquamarines do stuff with time. And the stones are sentient for the most part. They have names, and they do communicate to their human bonded. So each story has kind of followed one of the leaders of the land. And so Sunrunner is about Caspian Sunrunner. His family has problems with addiction. So once again, if that's something that is a concern, maybe don't dive your toes in. I will say that Caspian himself does not have that issue. His mother did die of an overdose. It's not as well known. And there are like, it's just known that the Sunrunners, like, that's their thing, is substance abuse. So just a little FYI if that's of any importance to you guys. It's not a huge feature, but it is just, some people are sensitive to the topic. So Caspian's father is missing, and he has gone to the Moonstrikers to get their help and support in finding out what happened and helping him find his father. So Frost is one of the Moonstrikers, and he has to be somewhere on the autism spectrum. He does not do too well with subtlety. He does not understand all social cues, but he's extremely intelligent and bright. He loves to, he's just like, these are facts. Here's my facts. Here are, he's straightforward. He's like, what I say is what I mean. And Caspian really appreciates that, because Caspian knows he's kind of being used by people, they're flowery words and whatnot, because he's in line to take over. He likes the fact that Frost does as he says, and is that there's no like wondering or any ulterior motives maybe. So it's a little bit of, I would say, a little bit of a slow burn, but it's also like this, they're kind of slowly building the clues as to what happened. The focus is really on finding out what's going on in the Sunrunner lands. And we do get to see, so Frost has a sister and brother, Kit and Embry, who are along for the ride, and we get to see the Moonstriker siblings a little bit more, which is a lot of fun. They're a hoot, and I adore the siblings. And these two, they just create this space where Caspian lets Frost be himself and actually really appreciates it, and then Frost is there to support Caspian, and they just create this space for each other and balance each other out really well. I was kind of entranced from the beginning, and there's going to be one more book in the series. I can't wait to see how this Sunrunner Time Chronicles wraps up. It's a great series. I recommend them all, but Caspian's a sweetheart. I love him. That's all you can say. And last but not least, we're back to full fantasy again with Minotaurs and Other Magic by TJ Nichols. So this one's kind of a special one, because I have recommended the Mythos series before by TJ Nichols. 100% recommend all the time. Reread. It's fantastic. It deals a lot with kind of like, there's underlining things of like racism and cultural differences, I should say. Basically what happens is this other world that has these, what we have thought of as fantastical creatures like minotaurs and dragons and werewolves and whatnot. That world crashed into our Earth, and now there's just a huge population of influx, and it's all about how humans incorporate them into the new world, essentially. But this Minotaur and Other Magics is actually a prequel to that series. So normally you'd probably want to read a prequel first, right? But I recommend reading the Mythos series and going through that whole thing and seeing where people end up, what happens to them, like what they're fighting for and all that kind of stuff. I feel like if you read the Mythos series first and then come back and read this prequel, when Nate slips somehow into this world Tariko. He has no idea what's going on. He doesn't know where he's at, so he's kind of had to steal some food and a couple of clothing in order to keep surviving. And for that, he is wanted by the authorities because essentially he stole, right? Even though it's for survival. So they catch up to him in this pub, and right when he's about to be taken by the authorities of Tariko, this Minotaur, Rohan, who's kind of been playing music in the corner, steps up and claims him. And so it's like, I'll take responsibility for him. He'll do his service to me, because he was on the lookout. He's been told by the Strega, who kind of foresees some things, to be on the lookout for anything odd that's going on. And this is something that he is like, okay, this is, I would consider odd. So he takes Nate back, and Nate starts to learn through a little bit of resistance where he's at, and the new cultural norms that are very different. and Rohan's like, look, I try to help you out, but your ways are kind of weird. And yet at the same time, he's like, I need you, Nate, to teach us about your world. I don't know why, but I feel like it's going to be important. So they have like this trade-off, and they get to know each other and start to build this bond, and it's really sweet to see. But the impact at the end of this is basically the beginning of the Mythos series. So knowing what's going to happen at the end of this prequel kind of helps make the emotional impact, I think, a little bit deeper. You're kind of more invested in, you're kind of like, oh no. Oh no, you know what's coming, you know that it's gonna be rough, you know that it's, you know, that not everyone's gonna make it, and so you know the stakes are high, and yet you're still invested. I don't know, I still got really invested in Rohan and Nate making it through. I mean, would I have liked more? Of course I would have liked more, but I think it's really powerful. It ends once the crash. That's it. We don't really get to see, because they're in, like, the Mythos series takes place near San Francisco, and I think they crash in like Wales or England, so we don't really get to see what happens to them after that. But that's kind of like, in a way, not the most important part of the story. So I really appreciated the whole thing. And you know what, anytime I can go and revisit this universe, I 100% will. I love what TJ Nichols has done with this world. I think the characters are intriguing. Each culture, like, because you know, every species has their own culture, and the way that they've now incorporated into Earth wherever they've landed is interesting. It's kind of like you get to see like the blended cultures starting to grow. Not in this one so much, but in the Mythos series. And I love it, and I can't recommend it enough. I will say TJ Nichols, they always have like interesting stories, but sometimes they don't always hit with me. But this whole series has been one of my absolute top favorites. They can write it more Mythos stories. I would never say no to another Mythos series. Anyways, that's what I've got for you guys from January. If you've read any of my suggestions from previous or not, if you got your own suggestions, you know, if you hated something of mine, I would like to know that too. You know, if you were like, God, you recommended this, but I found it boring, I fell asleep, DNF. Put that in the comment section below. I'm curious to see what you guys are reading, what you're up to. I don't know. With that, I'll leave you to it. Happy reading, you guys. See you soon.